I knew something was off the moment my son slid the documents across the table and spoke in that overly calm voice. "Just sign here, Mom. It's only to keep you safe." People think betrayal announces itself loudly, raised voices, slammed doors, dramatic exits. That's never been my experience. Real betrayal arrives quietly. It wears a helpful smile. It pretends to steady you while slowly guiding you toward a drop you didn't know was there. I sat still, the pen resting between my fingers. At 78, I've learned that words matter far less than what hides beneath them. And beneath Michael's reassurance was something dense and airless, like a room where the windows hadn't been opened in far too long. The papers were arranged neatly, squared at the edges, clipped together with care, as if order itself could make the request harmless. "It'll make things easier," he added. "For both of us." His eyes kept moving. From the documents to my hands. Anywhere but my face. Children look at you when they want comfort. Adults avoid your eyes when they want compliance. So I did what age has taught me to do. I read. Slowly. One line at a time. I let each sentence settle before moving on. The house still smelled faintly of soup from lunch. The same recipe I've made since my husband passed. Same pot. Same rhythm. Same quiet routine that keeps grief from rattling too loudly inside my chest. Yet with every paragraph I read, the air in my own home began to feel rearranged. Authority. Financial control. Medical decisions. At first, the words didn't frighten me. I'd seen them before, pamphlets at clinics, advice columns aimed at people my age. The world loves to reduce elderly lives into paperwork problems that need managing. Then I reached the section that made my fingertips go cold. With my signature, Michael would gain complete control over my finances, property, and personal decisions, should he determine I was no longer capable. Not a doctor. Not a court. Him. The sentence didn't shout. It didn't threaten. It simply existed, quiet and permanent, like a lock sliding into place. I looked up. "Why didn't you explain this part?" His smile came quickly, but it didn't belong to the boy I raised. It was thin, stretched, tired. "It's standard," he said. "Everyone does this at your age." At your age. Such a small phrase, yet it carries the power to erase a person. "I want to finish reading," I said. He exhaled sharply, impatience leaking through the edges of his calm. "You don't trust me?" Trust used to live easily between us. It didn't need defending. But now it felt like a word being used as leverage. I kept reading. Buried deeper was another clause, permission to relocate me to assisted living if he believed it was necessary. No further consent required. My signature today would silence me tomorrow. Outside, the old cedar tree groaned as the wind moved through its bare branches. The sound reminded me of bones brushing together. I felt the same brittle warning inside my chest. "You said this was only for emergencies," I said. "It is," he replied quickly. "You worry too much." He pushed the pen closer to me. 10 seconds, Mom." That's when I stopped seeing my son, and started seeing a man under pressure. His knee bounced beneath the table. Shadows sat heavily beneath his eyes. He wasn't patient. He was urgent. "Let me keep this overnight," I said softly. His jaw tightened. "Don't start this." But I already had. Women my age don't survive decades of loss, winters, and quiet endurance without learning how danger smells. And what lingered in that room wasn't concern. It was containment. "I'll read it again later," I said. "My eyes are tired." He laughed, forced, hollow. "Don't overthink it." When he left, the house felt larger somehow, like it had been holding its breath. I sat alone at the table long after the door closed. The papers lay before me, harmless in appearance, heavy in meaning. I traced the lines with a trembling finger, not from age, but from clarity. And in the late afternoon quiet, with no one to hear me, I whispered the truth aloud. Something isn't right. The house didn't feel quieter the next morning. It felt heavier. I woke before sunrise, the way I often do now, when sleep slips away without apology. The ceiling fan was still. The air felt thick, as though the night had pressed something unseen into every corner. I moved slowly through the kitchen, touching familiar things on purpose, the counter's smooth edge, the kettle's handle, the cold porcelain of the sink. These small rituals ground me. They remind me that some things still belong to me. I made oatmeal the same way I always do, stirring gently, watching the steam rise. Routine has been my companion since my husband died. Lately though, even routine feels unsure, like it's waiting to see what will happen next. When I sat down, the papers were still there on the table. I hadn't put them away. I didn't need to read them again, every word had etched itself into me, but I unfolded them anyway. Morning light has a way of sharpening truth. The sentence about relocating me without further consent looked harsher now. Less like preparation, more like permission. Permission for silence. Permission for removal. I tried reading the words aloud. My voice caught halfway through. At 7, I stepped outside to collect the mail. The air carried that damp metallic scent of early winter. Across the street, Mrs. Donnelly was trimming her roses, her hands steady despite her years. "You're up early," she called. "Didn't sleep," I answered. She nodded knowingly. Arthur didn't either. Pain kept him pacing all night. We exchanged the small, polite truths neighbors trade. Then she hesitated. "I saw your son yesterday," she said quietly, "with a man I didn't recognize." I traced the lines with a trembling finger, not from age, but from clarity. And in the late afternoon quiet, with no one to hear me, I whispered the truth aloud. "Something isn't right." The house didn't feel quieter the next morning. It felt heavier. I woke before sunrise, the way I often do now, when sleep slips away without apology. The ceiling fan was still. The air felt thick, as though the night had pressed something unseen into every corner. I moved slowly through the kitchen, touching familiar things on purpose: the counter's smooth edge, the kettle's handle, the cold porcelain of the sink. These small rituals ground me. They remind me that some things still belong to me. I made oatmeal the same way I always do, stirring gently, watching the steam rise. Routine has been my companion since my husband died. Lately though, even routine feels unsure, like it's waiting to see what will happen next. When I sat down, the papers were still there on the table. I hadn't put them away. I didn't need to read them again, every word had etched itself into me, but I unfolded them anyway. Morning light has a way of sharpening truth. The sentence about relocating me without further consent looked harsher now. Less like preparation, more like permission. Permission for silence. Permission for removal. I tried reading the words aloud. My voice caught halfway through. At 7, I stepped outside to collect the mail. The air carried that damp metallic scent of early winter. Across the street, Mrs. Donnelly was trimming her roses, her hands steady despite her years. "You're up early," she called. "Didn't sleep," I answered. She nodded knowingly. Arthur didn't either. Pain kept him pacing all night. We exchanged the small, polite truths neighbors trade. Then she hesitated. "I saw your son yesterday," she said quietly, "with a man I didn't recognize." My chest tightened. "Where?" "Near your driveway." They were pointing. Measuring, maybe. She shrugged as if to soften it. "Probably nothing." Nothing is the word people use when they don't want to alarm you, even when their instincts already have. I thanked her and walked back inside, carrying her words like a folded note I wasn't ready to open. Later that morning, I took my usual walk to the corner grocery store. 3 blocks. Familiar cracks in the sidewalk. The bakery still smelled of butter and sugar. Out there, the world behaved normally. No documents. No quiet threats dressed as care. Inside the store, I picked up things I didn't need: bread, apples, milk. Sometimes you buy time when you don't want to return home too quickly. At the register, Emma, the young cashier, studied me a little longer than usual. "You okay today?" she asked gently. "I'm fine," I said. She didn't look convinced. "You look tired." There was a moment, brief and fragile, when I nearly told her everything. How fear finds strange listeners. How loneliness opens doors it shouldn't. "I'm just thinking too much," I said instead. When I stepped outside, a car sat across the street with its engine running. A man inside glanced up just long enough to notice me before looking away. I told myself it meant nothing. But fear doesn't announce itself loudly. It hides in patterns. Back home, I read the papers again. And again. Each time, the language felt less neutral, less legal, and more like hands slowly tightening around something I hadn't agreed to surrender. By afternoon, a dull ache settled beneath my ribs. Not pain. Fear at my age doesn't shout. It whispers through careful movements, the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you fold a blanket even when the room isn't cold. By evening, the light faded piece by piece, and with it, my ability to pretend this was a misunderstanding. Yesterday, I thought my son was helping. Today, I knew better. My chest tightened. Where? Near your driveway. They were pointing. Measuring, maybe. She shrugged as if to soften it. Probably nothing. Nothing is the word people use when they don't want to alarm you, even when their instincts already have. I thanked her and walked back inside, carrying her words like a folded note I wasn't ready to open. Later that morning, I took my usual walk to the corner grocery store. 3 blocks. Familiar cracks in the sidewalk. The bakery still smelled of butter and sugar. Out there, the world behaved normally. No documents. No quiet threats dressed as care. Inside the store, I picked up things I didn't need: bread, apples, milk. Sometimes you buy time when you don't want to return home too quickly. At the register, Emma, the young cashier, studied me a little longer than usual. "You okay today?" she asked gently. "I'm fine," I said. She didn't look convinced. "You look tired." There was a moment, brief and fragile, when I nearly told her everything. How fear finds strange listeners. How loneliness opens doors it shouldn't. "I'm just thinking too much," I said instead. When I stepped outside, a car sat across the street with its engine running. A man inside glanced up just long enough to notice me before looking away. I told myself it meant nothing. But fear doesn't announce itself loudly. It hides in patterns. Back home, I read the papers again. And again. Each time, the language felt less neutral, less legal, and more like hands slowly tightening around something I hadn't agreed to surrender. By afternoon, a dull ache settled beneath my ribs. Not pain. Fear at my age doesn't shout. It whispers through careful movements, the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you fold a blanket even when the room isn't cold. By evening, the light faded piece by piece, and with it, my ability to pretend this was a misunderstanding. Yesterday, I thought my son was helping. Today, I knew better. Michael called that night. He didn't mention the papers at first. He spoke about traffic, about work, about how busy life had become. Then, like gravity, the conversation pulled itself where it wanted to go. "Did you read everything?" he asked. "Yes," I said. A pause. "And I'm still reading." He didn't like that answer. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "For whom?" I asked. Another pause. "For both of us." That's how pressure works. It pretends to be shared. The comments began slipping in after that, lightly spoken, carefully placed. "You forgot your appointment last month." "You sounded confused on the phone." "It's not safe to be alone so much at your age." "At your age." The words arrived like small stones dropped steadily into water. 2 days later, he showed up without calling. He didn't knock the way he used to. Just a light tap, uncertain, or entitled. He stepped inside, scanning the room like someone assessing a space rather than visiting it. His eyes touched everything without his hands. "I brought groceries," he said proudly, setting the bags down. Inside were things I don't eat. Food chosen quickly, thoughtlessly, proof of effort, not care. "You didn't need to do that," I said. "You need support," he replied. "You can't handle everything anymore." The air shifted. Like cold sneaking through a crack, he pulled out another copy of the documents. "Updated version," he said. "Simpler." I didn't reach for it. "Updated how?" I streamlined the confusing parts. As if my life were clutter behind a desk. He pushed the pen toward me again. "I'm trying to take care of you." "I didn't ask you to," I said. That was when his patience cracked. That's the problem. That evening, Mrs. Donnelly called out to me again as I took out the trash. "Your son was here earlier," she said. "He asked Arthur about moving companies." Moving companies. I stood still, my hands resting on the cold plastic bin. "Did he say why?" I asked. No, just that he might need things arranged quickly. Quickly. Back inside, the house felt fragile, like something that could be packed up if someone arrived with enough authority. The papers sat on the table, innocent in shape, dangerous in intent. And for the first time, I stopped wondering if something was wrong. I began asking myself how far he was willing to go. I went to the library the next morning. Not because I needed books, I needed clarity. And libraries have always been places where no one rushes you into decisions you don't understand. I walked slower than usual, not from weakness, but from the weight of my thoughts. The building greeted me with that familiar smell of paper and quiet patience. Books never assume you're confused. They wait. Behind the desk sat Harold, an old acquaintance from years back. His hair had thinned, but his eyes still carried that steady attentiveness that comes from watching life carefully instead of loudly. "Morning," he said. "You look like you've been carrying something heavy." "I have," I replied, "and I don't know where to put it." He didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and led me to a small table near the window. I slid the papers toward him. "My son wants me to sign these." He adjusted his glasses and began reading. He didn't skim. He didn't interrupt. And the longer the silence stretched between us, the tighter my chest became. Finally, he looked up. "This isn't a simple authorization," he said carefully. "This is full control." I swallowed. That's what it felt like. "It goes further than most people realize," he continued, pointing to sections I already knew by heart. "Financial authority, medical authority, property decisions, including relocation." "Without my consent?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Your consent today replaces your voice later." That sentence settled into me like cold truth. "Can he sell my house?" I asked. "With this," he said gently, "yes." The word echoed louder than it should have. Harold leaned back. "I've seen documents like this before. Twice. Neither ended well." "What happened?" "One woman lost her home. Another was placed in assisted care because her son claimed she couldn't manage. She could. He just needed access to the money." I stared out the window. A child rode past on a bicycle, laughing, jacket flapping open against the cold. Life always moves forward for the young. For the old, it asks you to defend your ground. "I thought maybe I was imagining things," I said quietly. "You're not," Harold replied. "Pressure disguised as concern is still pressure." On the walk home, the wind cut sharp against my cheeks. I didn't hurry. Each step felt deliberate, as though my body understood something my heart was still catching up to. By the time I reached my front door, one thing was clear. Whatever my son was planning, I would not make it easier for him. That afternoon, I found a letter in the mail addressed to Michael. It had been forwarded to my house. Again. I hesitated, then opened it. It was from a bank I didn't recognize. The language was careful, professional, but unmistakable. "Loan application pending. Additional collateral may be required. Verification of property ownership." They didn't need to say which property. The picture sharpened. Later that day, I drove to Michael's house under the excuse of returning a few tools he'd lent me months ago. I wanted to see his face when I stopped guessing. His truck was in the driveway. He opened the door too quickly, as if he'd been expecting me. Inside, papers were scattered across the dining table. Not organized. Not neat. "Urgent. What brings you here?" he asked. "I found something in my mailbox," I said, handing him the envelope. His expression changed, only slightly, but enough. "That was misdelivered," he said, pocketing it without opening it. "What kind of loan are you applying for?" I asked. "That's private," he snapped. "As private as the documents you want me to sign?" Silence stretched tight between us. I glanced at the table. A brochure for home remodeling. A printed spreadsheet. And beneath it all, my address typed neatly at the top of a document. "Are you planning something with my house?" I asked. He rubbed his forehead. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under." "Then explain it." "I can't," he said. "Not if you're going to turn everything into an accusation." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "What did you think would happen?" I asked softly. That I wouldn't notice? Or that I wouldn't question you? He didn't answer. When I left, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from certainty. 2 days later, he came again. Unannounced. He paced the living room while listing concerns about my memory, my routines, my age. Each example small, carefully chosen, collected. He wasn't talking to me. He was building a case. I spoke to a specialist, he said. They say seniors often don't notice their own decline. Decline, I repeated. The word felt rehearsed. He slid printed articles toward me, symptoms highlighted. This is why the paperwork matters, he said. Without it, things get complicated. For whom? I asked. He didn't answer. That night, my neighbor Maria stopped by with a casserole. She was a retired nurse. People like her don't miss patterns. I've seen this before, she said quietly after I told her. It doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with convenience. He says I'm forgetting things. That's a tactic, she replied. And you're not confused. For the first time in weeks, someone said it without hesitation. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Michael wasn't waiting for something to happen. He was preparing for it. And if I didn't move first, he would. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness that wasn't fear and wasn't fatigue. It felt more like a knot, tight, patient, waiting to be addressed. I moved through the house deliberately, touching things as I went. The back of a chair, the edge of the counter, the curtain cord slipping easily between my fingers. These objects have known my hands for decades. They know when I'm steady. Maria's words echoed softly in my mind. I've seen this before. By midday, I knew guessing was no longer enough. I needed someone who would read those papers without emotion, without love, guilt, or memory clouding the truth. There was a small legal clinic downtown, staffed by retired attorneys who volunteered their time. I called. A man with a calm, unhurried voice said he could see me that afternoon. The building used to be a house. Converted, but still gentle in its bones. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and polish. Mr. Hayward met me in a modest room with a single lamp casting warm light across the desk. "What can I help you with?" he asked. I slid the documents toward him. "My son wants me to sign these. He says it's for my safety." He didn't react. He simply read. Minutes passed. He removed his glasses once, rubbed the bridge of his nose, then kept going. When he finally looked up, his expression hadn't hardened, but it had settled. "How old are you?" he asked. 78. "And are you managing your daily life?" "Yes," I said. "Not quickly, but clearly." He nodded. "Then you should not sign this." The words landed cleanly. No drama.
No hesitation.
This is a durable power of attorney with unusually broad authority, he explained. It gives your son control over finances, property, and medical decisions, including relocation to a care facility without further approval. My pulse thickened in my wrists. He said it was standard. "It isn't," he replied. "Standard documents protect the person signing them. This one protects the person receiving authority." Could he sell my home? Yes. And I couldn't stop it? Not with this in place. Legally silent. That phrase didn't need to be spoken. I felt it. "Has your son suggested you're declining?" he asked gently. "Yes." He sighed softly. "That's common in these situations." Situations. As if this were a category instead of my life. "What should I do?" I asked. "For now," he said, "do nothing. Don't sign. Keep the originals. And if pressure increases, come back. There are protections for people in your position." Protections. I hadn't thought of myself as someone who needed them. But perhaps that's how danger survives, by waiting for pride to get tired. 2 days later, the clinic called me. My son had contacted them. He asked if my records showed signs of cognitive concern. The warmth drained from my hands as I held the phone. He insisted something must have been missed, the woman said carefully. We told him there was no such indication. After the call ended, I stood at the counter for a long time, staring at nothing. It wasn't just paperwork anymore. He was building evidence. That evening, I remembered a question he'd asked weeks earlier. Do you ever lose track of time, Mom? At the time, I'd laughed. Now I heard the intention behind it. He wasn't checking on me. He was documenting me. That night, Maria came by again. When I told her about the clinic call, her face tightened. I've seen families push evaluations to justify control, she said quietly. Sometimes they succeed. I sat down slowly. Why would he go that far? People under financial pressure don't always recognize themselves, she replied. When she left, I walked through my house as if seeing it from someone else's eyes. It's age. It's quiet. It's value. I understood then. Michael didn't see a home. He saw leverage. The next morning, clarity arrived quietly. Not courage. Not anger. Resolution. I took out my old notebook, the one that once held grocery lists and garden reminders. I wrote a single line at the top of a blank page. What I must do now. First, find my own lawyer. Second, secure my documents. I found a small firm 2 towns over that specialized in elder rights. I called. They scheduled me for the next morning. I gathered my will, my deed, medical directives, everything Michael had ever touched, and hid them where only I would look. Not out of fear. Out of wisdom. That afternoon, Michael called. I've been thinking, he said. Maybe we should schedule a cognitive evaluation. Just to be safe.
No, he replied calmly.
Silence. I'll come by tonight, he said. No, I said again. Not tonight. Why? Because I'm busy. Doing what? Living my life. I hung up before he could respond. For the first time in years, the quiet that followed didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The next morning, I drove farther than I usually do. Not because the distance mattered, but because choosing to leave my familiar streets felt like a statement, small but deliberate. The law office sat beside a hardware store in a quiet brick building that looked unchanged by time. Nothing rushed there. Nothing glittered. It felt steady. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and old paper. A receptionist smiled without pity and directed me to a modest room lined with shelves of thick books that carried the weight of other people's hard decisions. Mr. Boyd arrived a few minutes later. He listened without interrupting. That mattered more than I expected. I told him everything, the papers, the pressure, the clinic call, the questions meant to frame me as fading. When I finished, he folded his hands and spoke slowly. Your instincts are correct, he said. You're not imagining this. Something loosened inside my chest. We need to act before your son escalates, he continued. Not out of punishment, out of protection. What does that mean? I asked. It means we put your wishes in writing. Clearly, legally, and in a way he cannot override. He explained each step carefully, never talking down to me, never rushing. A new power of attorney, not in my son's name. A healthcare directive requiring verified medical proof before any decision could be made without my consent. A property protection notice filed to prevent unauthorized transfers. Each document felt like a brick placed deliberately back into my own foundation. This doesn't mean you don't love your son, Mr. Boyd said gently. It means you understand boundaries. When we finished, he looked at me steadily. Mrs. Carter, your clarity will matter if this ever goes before a judge. And make no mistake, he may try. I nodded. I won't be surprised again. When I left the office, the cold air sharpened my senses. I stood beside my car for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling the unfamiliar but welcome weight of resolve. At home, I hid the new documents where only I would think to look. Then I sat at the kitchen table, hands resting flat against the wood. Not trembling. Steady. Michael arrived that evening without calling. He let himself in like someone who still believed the rules belonged to him. I talked to a social worker, he said immediately. She says there are programs for seniors who struggle with decision-making. I continued folding laundry. I told her you might need an evaluation. I didn't look up. I won't be doing that, I said. You don't see the changes, he insisted. You forget things. Small things, I replied. Not who I am. He paced, frustration sharpening his movements. You're forcing my hand, he muttered. I paused. What does that mean? He stopped, then smiled too quickly. Nothing. But tone tells truths words try to bury. The next morning, I found answers without looking for them. In my late husband's old desk, tucked behind papers no one had touched in years, I discovered a stack of envelopes, all addressed to Michael, all delivered to my house. Past due notices. Consolidation offers. Warnings. One phrase repeated again and again. Secured asset required. Then I found the notebook. His handwriting rushed and uneven across the page. Dates. Phone numbers. Property values. A list titled Steps. Get POA signed. Confirm capacity requirements. Appraisal, loan approval. I sat very still. Fear didn't arrive. Understanding did. When Michael came again on Sunday, he didn't pretend anymore. Let's finish this, he said, holding out the papers. I know about the loans, I said. His face drained of color. I know about the collateral. I know about the appraisal. Silence fell heavy between us. I'm drowning, he whispered finally. I thought I could fix everything if I stabilized things. By taking my life out from under me? I asked softly. I thought you'd be safer elsewhere, he said weakly. I am safest where I still belong, I replied. I met with an attorney, I continued. Everything is protected. You cannot make decisions for me. He looked smaller then, not like a villain, like a man who had gambled on someone else's silence and lost. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I replied. But sorry doesn't undo preparation. He left without argument. In the days that followed, the house felt calmer. Not empty. Claimed. Michael called once more, his voice quieter. I won't bring it up again, he said. I know, I replied. After the call, I opened my notebook and wrote one final line beneath the others. I chose myself. That evening, I sat by the window watching the cedar sway gently in the fading light. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. No.